Cruise news time, and look, the CDC is back, y'all, with their new set of voluntary rules. And I don't know how voluntary they are because the cruise industry is hot. Wait till you see what is in these rules. They've changed the color chart. They're pushing hard for boosters. Cruise industry not happy. Cruise news. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lido, Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. Welcome to a Thursday. Welcome to February the 10th, 2022. This show is all about the new voluntary program coming out from the CDC. This was just released yesterday, February the 9th. And again, it's a voluntary program. The cruise lines, the cruise industry, the cruise ships themselves have until February the 18th to decide whether or not they will be a part of it. And of course, it raises the question, what happens if they're not a part of it? Can the CDC still regulate those cruise lines, those cruise ships? Well, they say yeah. And I think that's the point of contention. So let's work through this. They've changed the color chart. They've changed what colors mean what. The biggest thing that's changed, though, the biggest designation that's changed that the cruise lines are now trying to grapple with is they've come up with 3 designations for how vaccinated a cruise ship is. They've come up with 3 tiers of vaccination. The lowest tier is called not highly vaccinated. That means that if you look at the crew members and the passengers, less than 95% of that total amount of people are vaccinated. 95% less than that is not highly vaccinated. Now, highly vaccinated means that there are crew members and passengers that equals more than 95% vaccinated. So somewhere between 95 and 100% of the people are vaccinated. That's in the highly vaccinated bucket. And then the top bucket is called the vaccination standard of excellence. Oh, the vaccination standard of excellence. That means that 95% of crew and passengers are vaccinated and boosted. I don't know why they called it something so regal. They could have just said, vaccines with boosters or something like that. But that's what the CDC wants the cruise lines to get to. And they've made their rules based on these buckets. And one example of how these things are different on a vaccination standard of excellence ship, close contacts and people identified with the virus, they must quarantine at least 5 days after their last exposure. But on ships that do not meet the vaccination standard of excellence, if they're just highly vaccinated, close contacts must quarantine for 10 days. So the vaccination standard of excellence ships, their quarantine is half the length of the other ones. So this all starts to pose a lot of problems to the cruise ships. And while that's a big change, they also majorly overhauled the color chart website. They added a whole new dashboard. You can track along, but they changed the colors. So let's jump into the computer and I'll show you what's going on over there. Okay, here we are. We're at the cruise ship color status. This has a lot of the information. Like, this is a good website to go to. I'll leave this linked in the top comment because this will tell you about a lot of the changes. What I really like here, though, is they have this cruise ship dashboard. We'll expand that out here in a second so that we can see that better. But before we look at the dashboard, let's look at the color status definitions. They flip-flop orange and yellow. So orange used to be less severe than yellow, and a lot of people pointed that out. Like, in the scheme of colors, it seems like orange should be after yellow, and now orange is after yellow. So in the olden days, when we were looking for yellow cruise ships, meaning that those ships were under investigation, now we will be looking for orange cruise ships. So yeah, there we go. Green, no reported cases. Yellow, reported cases of COVID-19 are below the threshold of investigation. Orange, the reported cases are above the threshold of investigation. Orange now means ships are under investigation. Red means it's all hit the fan, and that's not good. And then gray are ships that are cruising in U.S. waters that have not decided to be a part of the program. Just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through a ton of this, but at the very bottom of this page is frequently asked questions, and many of the questions that I hear frequently asked are addressed here. And it's not that challenging to break it down. So I would encourage you to go read that also. But I do want to show you the new dashboard. I'm kind of excited about the dashboard as a little bit of a nerd. Here's the real-time dashboard that you'll be able to go through and parse out some data. If we're looking over here on the left at the big buckets, cruise ships that have opted in, cruise ships that have opted out, vaccination standard of excellence ships, and highly vaccinated ships, you see that we have 20 ships that have opted in. I do believe those are the Norwegian Cruise Line holding ships. They announced before the program that they would be in the program regardless. But what you really want to know is which ships have cases, which ships don't. You'll use the bar graph on the left for that, and you can click each one of those. If you click the little green 19, you can see which cruise ships are in the green. And fortunately, right now, we do have cruise ships carrying passengers that are in the green, which means there were no reported cases in the last week. Now, remember that the yellow represents cruise ships that have cases that aren't being investigated because there's not enough cases. And now the orange is the cruise ships that are under investigation. Well, certainly some significant change, a big push for boosters, and the cruise industry not too happy with this announcement from the CDC yesterday. They had some pretty strong words, and the CDC kind of clapped back and said, look, it's voluntary, but you should do it. And I'll tell you why. And I will tell you why. But first, let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything that's going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. Look, by the time Lido Loca rides off into the sunset, I'd like to get to 18 million subscribers, but I think we can get to 1 million in the next year or so, but it's going to take your help. Be a part of the Loca fam. Please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. Really, that way you won't miss out on any of these episodes. Thank you in advance. All right. I'm going to pop over to this article that was on USA Today. They'd actually had quotes from both CLIA, the Cruise Line International Association, and a representative from the CDC. And this is a good article also. But here it is. These two headings really kind of sum up what we're talking about today. Trade Association dismayed by the new guidance. Here's how USA Today reported how CLIA responded to these new rules. CLIA, a cruise industry trade association, released a statement Wednesday calling the CDC's latest cruise guidelines out of step and unnecessary, pointing to the cruise industry's stringent testing requirements, on-site quarantine facilities, and extensive response plans. The result has been a dramatic drop in the number of positive cases, with hospitalizations being extraordinarily rare, the CLIA statement read. The latest CDC guidance appears out of step with the actual public health conditions on cruise ships and unnecessary in light of the societal trends away from more restricted measures. So CLIA's hot. And it begs the question, if this program is voluntary, why does CLIA care? Why don't they just not do it? Or is it not necessarily voluntary? And USA Today answers that question for us. Also, they have the titled section here, cruises will still be regulated by the CDC regardless of commitment. USA Today says it this way: the CDC has said its new program is voluntary. Cruise lines can choose whether or not to participate, but voluntary doesn't mean that cruise ships will not be regulated by the CDC regardless of whether they opt into the program. Cruise ships operators can choose the healthy cell option, or they can choose to do their own kind of thing, but it's very important to keep in mind that ships will still be under CDC regulatory authority. That's Captain Amy Trifoletti. She's the liaison or the person in charge from the CDC with cruising. This is what she told USA Today back in January. If a cruise line chooses to opt out of the program, its ships will fall under the CDC's mask order for public transportation and the agency's regulatory authority for inspections. USA Today goes on to ask if the CDC would be concerned about COVID-19 on a ship that isn't under the new program. Trifoletti answers, I think we will probably be quicker to exercise our regulatory authority because, we won't know what's happening on the ship as far as the mitigation measures. And look, I can already hear some of you out there. Why is the CDC doing this to the cruise lines and not doing it to football stadiums or theme parks? All of the normal tropes that we march out when we're talking about the CDC. The CDC doesn't have the authority to do this. Just the quick civics lesson. The CDC is under the purvey of Health and Human Services, which is part of the executive branch of our government. They have the ability to allocate power where they want to allocate power, and power has been allocated to the CDC to to regulate cruising in this manner. It's foreign vessels coming to the coast of the United States, and they can decide whether or not they will allow cruise ships to cruise or not allow cruise ships to cruise. CDC has that power and authority. Why don't they do it to the airlines? Why don't they do it to theme parks? Why don't they do it to sports stadiums? Well, it's because they can't. They do it to cruise ships because they can. It's like being at a birthday party and you see your friends' kids acting a fool, and you want to say something, but you can't say something, so you don't say something. But man, as soon as your kid acts up, you take it out on them. Well, I believe that's what's happening. I believe that the CDC is taking it out where they can while watching their friends' kids act up. I tell you what, the reaction of CLIA really speaks volumes. It really says to me that this program isn't as voluntary as it may seem. I believe that the CDC has a mandate, that they have a job to do, but I do believe that the cruise lines have risen up and really taken it upon themselves to be one of the safest ways to travel. And look, I'm not saying that the CDC should no longer look at the cruise industry, but I think they should look at the track record of the cruise industry since the cruise restart and realize that the cruise lines are taking care of business. They're keeping passengers safe. They're keeping case counts low on their cruise ships. And I think that that should come into consideration, and that the CDC should step back and let them run their business, and then really only step in if something goes wrong. But it doesn't look like that's the case right now. It's going to be interesting to see how this impacts cruising. I guess the silver lining for me is, sure, this is more hoops for the cruise industry to jump through, but they've been able to jump through the hoops so far, and if they can continue to do that and increase capacity on cruise ships, the industry will survive. It will get back to a good level of profitability, and we'll be enjoying that cruise life for a long period to come. But yeah, it's who wants all that rigmarole? Boom, that's your cruise news. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you so much for checking out the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please show your support by hitting the like button. And look, if you don't hit the like button, sadly, I'll be forced to punish you. And by punishing you, I will make a new voluntary program that you can opt in or opt out of. But if you don't opt out of it, every time you don't watch the show, I'm going to change the colors of the stoplights in your town, and you won't know whether to stop or go. But that's up to you. Hit the like button. This is Tony with Lido Loca. Until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.